John Dubensky. Attending college can be a lot like being on a ship. You're away from home for long periods of time. You'll have to sleep in close, cramped quarters. And if you're not used to it, you may end up doing a lot of stumbling and vomiting. I'm a huge fan of the ocean, and especially boating and surfing and sailing. If I only had the money and resources, I'd move there. Dare to dream. However, I've really grown to love life here at Juniata College. It might not be as magnificent as being out at sea, but I've had some intoxicatingly peaceful moments, sitting on a bench on the quad late at night with a friend. Sure, life at Juniata is challenging, but nothing that's worth it is ever easy. For many people, college represents a difficult transition between adolescence and adulthood, a process which is supposed to prepare students for the future. After all, in the words of playwright Sean O'Casey, all the world's a stage, and most of us are desperately unrehearsed. Colleges do their best to rehearse students for what is to come. Juniata already has a fine reputation for crafting extraordinary young men and women and aiding them on their voyage into the real world. In fact, let's pretend for a moment that we are the USS Juniata. We now have a new president who will be taking the helm, Dr. James Troha. But the ocean can be a very dangerous place. That's why ships were invented, to get people safely from point A to point B. Still, sometimes a ship can't help getting battered up a little bit. Sometimes a ship loses part of itself. I mentioned how a college prepares students for the lives they have chosen. But what about the students that struggle to make the journey? What about the students that fall by the wayside and get left behind? Dr. Troha, we need you to not only care about the students at Juniata who excel, but also those who don't. They should matter just as much as anyone else. When a student fails, the college loses a part of itself, just like a ship getting tossed around by a stormy sea. A ship can lose some of its cargo, or part of the ship itself can break off. In maritime law, there are 4 kinds of wreckage: flotsam, jetsam, lagan, and derelict. President Troha needs to keep a lookout for this wreckage in the water. Flotsam, for example, is any kind of wreckage of a ship or its cargo that is floating on the surface of the water. When you operate a college, you inevitably end up with a large amount of flotsam in the student body. Students who have lost their way, simply floating around, unsure of what they want to do with themselves. College is the place where dreams are realized, where people find their true calling and begin their lives. But if you recognize that idea, you must also recognize the inverse. College is also the place where many dreams are destroyed, where people become lost, and it seems like the life they envisioned may never actually begin. So does the burden of success or failure lie solely with the student? I don't think so. In some cases, I think the school is definitely at fault in some way. Here at Juniata, we like to boast about our acceptance rate of students into professional and graduate school. Our own website proudly shows off these rates. 95% of students were employed or in grad school 6 months after graduation. 94% of pre-medical and health profession students gained admission to medical or professional school. 100% of students who applied to law school were accepted. That's great, but what are the statistics on the people who realized after 1 semester or 5 that they weren't going to make the cut? For example, according to Juniata's Director of Institutional Planning and Research, on average, anywhere between 25 to 30% of incoming freshmen begin at Juniata with a program of emphasis in biology, but only 15% actually graduate with that POE. But there's much more to that story than what mere statistics can tell. Tell me, how many freshmen cry alone in their dorm rooms, terrified to drop organic chemistry because they know how angry their parents will be if they don't stay pre-medicine? Things like that happen a lot at this school, especially in programs related to pre-health professions. As a pre-medicine student, I've seen it. My physics professor, an adjunct professor, late last semester told the class that it was his job to make sure we understand the physics and not to weed out those who don't. However, in many other classes, I can't help but feel like some students are being weeded out. That being said, I completely recognize the purpose of our academic system. And I also know that there's a substantial amount of help available to students who are having academic trouble, and very capable advisors who would be more than happy to guide a student through such troubles. But the system isn't foolproof. these students don't always turn out okay in the end. We certainly can't afford to compromise our competitive excellence, but in a community that is so dedicated to helping one another, we have to remember that some people need more help than others. There are, without a doubt, students who have been driven away from their career path in very subtle ways by the school. Students in pre-health professions might be the most common example, but it happens across all fields of study. These students are the second kind of wreckage, jetsam. Jetsam refers to a part of a ship or its cargo that is purposefully cast overboard to lighten the load of the vessel. So why bring all this up? Can we really expect the president to address a student's specific academic problems? The president has far bigger plans at work for the school. He works on a much more general, administrative level. Keeping that in mind, the student wreckage I've been talking about might seem like the least of Dr. Troha's worries, but I disagree. I believe that no matter what goals Dr. Troha sets, he should be factoring in what I've talked about. He should always worry about the flotsam and the jetsam in the water. A college president must take care of everything that a college provides, but also what it doesn't. If you keep that in mind, then maybe you can help some of the students that get left behind. After all, the third kind of wreckage is Lagan, cargo at the bottom of the ocean which can be reclaimed. Remember that many students do not make the voyage smoothly or at all. The reality is that if this or any other college isn't run properly, it can and will effectively ruin the lives of some students. So maybe Dr. Troha can work to create an atmosphere that is better equipped to deal with the students who are being left behind. But as of right now, Juniata does not do everything that it could for those that lose their way. Dr. Troha, you are our new president, and you've been entrusted with an enormous amount of responsibility. Not only do you control how the campus physically operates, but you also manage the emotional environment of cooperation and competition among the students. It is essentially the president who must guide, teach, and prepare students for the future by ensuring smooth sailing. Dr. Troha, remember that if there is any wreckage in the water, that's a sign that the voyage is not going smoothly. If your policies and attitudes reflect the idea that everyone matters, including those who are unsure or do not excel, it will become integrated into our culture. If that gets done, maybe there will be one more student who ends up successfully reaching their true calling and passion. If not, many students will continue to be effectively forgotten. The last kind of wreckage is known as derelict. Derelict, like Lagan, is also cargo that is sunk to the bottom of the ocean. What distinguishes derelict from Lagan is that there is no hope of reclaiming it. I certainly hope that no one, especially the college president, is okay with even one student who has been academically cast aside and forgotten. Juniata provides an extraordinary academic experience, and I look forward to Dr. Troha guiding us in salvaging the wreckage in the water.